Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here, and today I would like to discuss the absolute madness of NVIDIA DLSS5. What a crazy time to be alive. So this, for me, came out yesterday. For you guys, it would be like technically like 2 days ago, so I'm recording this on Tuesday. It's been pretty nuts. It's been wild. It's been super wild. So of course, you've probably seen the pictures, you've probably seen the videos and stuff like that, where they have this new filter that they're saying it's an AI filter, but it's like, oh, it's not AI. Like the structure and the textures, everything is still the same underneath, but it's AI changing everything visually. It doesn't change the actual ones and zeros of the game. It just slaps a few more ones and zeros on it. It's like such a weird thing where they're trying to be like, it's not really AI, but like it's AI. And it's like, well, then it's AI. Like it even looks like all the crappy AI that we always talk about, or kind of early AI stuff. And it's fascinating to say the least. And I'm gonna say this will be controversial. It's not all bad, because it does make Starfield look better. Now, is that a high bar? Of course not. That's an underground oil pipeline. But still, those couple images I saw of Starfield, I was like, well, that actually looks kind of cool. But Starfield is also from Bethesda, and they have what I would consider no style, or the blandest style you could possibly imagine. However you want to take it, you know exactly what I mean. You've seen those games. Even for Fallout, I love Fallout, but visually speaking, it's very simplistic. So it's like, that's the one thing where it's like, they have a weird, I can't even call it realistic style. They just look like normal people. So the AI kind of makes them look all right. And it's like, yeah, when you zoom in, sure it does. It can make them look better. Some of them, it depends on where you are, of course, like different games, different characters, but they don't have what I would consider much of a style. So it works for them. Everyone else, I would say it doesn't even come close to working. And even then, with the Starfield thing, let me see that with characters moving around. Let me see that with more characters even. Because they showed, I saw some characters where it was like, oh, that's a character from Oblivion, and that's from a super old game that was remastered, and then you slap AI on top of that, and it's like, ugh. You're putting an AI, quote unquote realism filter on top of a super old game. Just because it got remastered doesn't mean there was that much of a difference. It's still a super old game, and then it will look weird too, because obviously, like the facial models and stuff, especially for Bethesda games, like you go to Resident Evil and stuff, which that's, like a lot of people said, I was surprised I hadn't seen it. I finally started hearing it today, but the first thing I thought was like, she looks like Scarlett Johansson. Great actress, love her as Black Widow, but definitely not Grace Ashcroft. So that was the first thing I thought, and so I was finally starting to see that a lot more today, because I'm like, that was instantly the first thing I thought was like, she kind of looks like Scarlett Johansson in this, but very different. And if they start talking and moving around, it might look a little bit better compared to, I don't even remember the engine that Bethesda actually used. I forgot what they call theirs. But the RE engine will probably look a little better once the characters start talking, compared to, you have those really stiff lip movements and actions from all the Bethesda games. Those will probably end up looking super weird with that AI filter. Resident Evil might look a little bit better. Hogwarts Legacy might look a little bit better, at least as far as like the actual movement. That old lady was definitely the most egregious one, in my personal opinion. From that clip that they showed, I was like, the Grace thing is super egregious because it like changes her face, but it literally just looked worse with the older lady. I was like, she already looked old enough. It was just like, oh, AI old? Okay, here's 18 times the wrinkles. And then it's just like, okay, all right, I guess. And then they changed the kid to, an adult actor playing a kid on the CW teen drama. Shout out to the Vampire Diaries. But it's like, okay, when you have a still image, or, like I said, a Bethesda game, you're zooming straight in on that person's face. It's like, sure, that can look fine once they're barely moving. Let's see what happens when you got, I was gonna say, show me all the empty planets, but they're empty planets. So those might actually look great. When it's just landscapes and stuff, I've seen some of those clips and it's like, yeah, that looks pretty cool. Even though there are some other elements of that don't even work, because you can look at a landscape and it's like, oh, so it just changed the whole color of everything I was looking at. That doesn't, okay. If anything, NVIDIA did give the entire gaming community a bonus filter. All your games now have a new unlockable filter. Not every game comes with filters. Resident Evil does it all the time, but now every game can have a new filter that you can use on your third or fourth playthrough if you really want to do that, just to see what it looks like. I'll do it 2 or 3 times in. Sure, I'll throw that filter on just to see what it looks like, but I would never in my life use that, at least based on what we saw. If it changed, that's another one of the big things where they're like, hey, when the companies actually get their hands on it, it'll start to change, and then they'll kind of tweak it to their personal, art styles, and so it'll look closer, but also better. And it's like, that's interesting, because that just means it's full AI then. But it's not also full AI, it's something else. And it's like, okay, sure. So very fascinating. This is obviously, like, there's not much else to really say. It's just crazy. I'm excited to see the discourse over the next couple of weeks and how they deal with this. NVIDIA is obviously, you know, if we're being honest, one of the forefronts when it comes to the whole AI situation, but we are still going to see that AI bubble burst. They might not be the ones putting in the trillions upon trillions of money into AI, but they're definitely a huge part of it. I mean, they've always been a part of it in what I always consider kind of the best way. It's like, hey, you know, AI upgen, or not upgen, but the frame generation and stuff like that. It's like, okay, that's really cool. That actually helps out systems. It helps games run smoother. AI upscaling to 4K and stuff like that. Like, that stuff, phenomenal. And now we're in that era where they kind of leaped over. They were on the edge and everybody was happy, and then they jumped right over the edge and went full generative AI, and it was like, ooh, that's not great. Which, once again, they're saying it's not generative, but it is generative because it is an AI filter, but somehow it's not collecting data. Like, it's super weird. It's like they're trying to say it's not generative AI, but it's clearly that, because it wouldn't change things so drastically if it wasn't a generative AI situation where it was gathering or, you know, utilizing data from across the internet in some way, shape, and or form. So it's a very odd thing. And like I said, in very small ways, it can look cool. You know, as an alternate filter, sure, I'll use that just like I do any game, random filter in any video game. But I'm not going to be like, man, this is great. This is nothing compared to them doing like AI upscaling. That's beautiful. That's a 10 out of 10 gold star. Whatever you want, that's great. I love when they do that. I have loved that ever since it started happening. Like, that, phenomenal. Keep up with that. That's great. But this, I don't like. Like most people, like just about everybody. Like, there, like I said, elements, it can look cool. I'm sure there are tons of games where it's like, wow, it'll be interesting to see no matter what. I'd be fascinated. Like I said, I would never do it on the first playthrough, and not a day in my life would I ever do that. But in my head, this has already been degraded to that alternate filter. Like I said, you know, it's giving the entire gaming community, at least on PC, a new filter. Every game has a special filter now, if you want to look at it, just to see how weird it can be. That's worth checking out. But other than that, I'm like, yeah, there's not much here that says this is good. And I'm very curious, you know, when they talk about like, hey, we have to wait and see what happens when the companies really get their hands on it, and then the AI is it'll basically be Gen AI off of their actual engine. So it would be like generative AI based on the actual RE engine, so it can upscale that. But then there's other elements where even from trailers, you know, like I said, adding the wrinkles to the old lady where it was like a billion extra wrinkles, they also changed the lighting. You know, like I said, they changed the color scheme of some stuff, and it's like, okay, how does that work? You know, like every company, like if they're going in, how much work do companies have to put into it? You know, obviously these companies have decided to sign on. No offense to Bethesda, but like, of course they will. But you know, Capcom signed on to it, and I'm sure there's, you know, a couple other companies out there as well. And it's like, okay, how much work are they going to be putting in just for this AI filter to do what they already did while making the actual game? It'll probably be different, you know, if we're going, oh crap. Hopefully they're already too far into the Code Veronica remake to do that, but I'm like, they're gonna start going into games like building off of this, but they can only do that on PC. Now that I think about it, we should still be fine, because I was like, oh crap, what if they start, you know, eventually it'll be easy enough to where it's like, hey, start using this to help us out. But that's a real tricky situation. That's super tricky. But if it starts to actually become something where, you know, like I said, if you're going into its generative AI based on a company's own assets, that's different. We're not doing that with Bethesda, because Bethesda games look like garbage. Like, that's a totally brand new situation. Like, that is a different game. With Capcom though, they could have that work because their games already look phenomenal, which is also why I would say they don't need this, but they can make that work to lessen their load because they can actually use their own assets. Bethesda can't do that because they'll just make more things that look like meh. So I don't, you know, like, that's not really gonna, but what is Bethesda gonna do? Because that's a totally different art style. I mean, it obviously is currently with the Capcom thing as well, changing grace to Scarlett Johansson, of course. But at some point, if it's even remotely true, because it can get better, it can become something that's actually okay. And I would love to see that, where it actually ends up being all right, and then it turns less into generative AI, and it's more just like, hey, you know, not taking things from everybody across the internet and just being like, old person, old, young person, you know, fake young person. Maybe that's why it turned that kid into a 30-year-old, because it took all that stuff from like every live action teen drama where it's like 32-year-old people playing high schoolers. Maybe that's why it did that. If we're being totally honest, that's probably why it did that. But at some point, if it's actually generating stuff from actual real company assets, then maybe that could be something good. maybe that could even help the companies produce games faster, at least from a visual, artistic standpoint. But there's a whole lot of questions that go into that, because I'm trying to, you gotta have, you have to be honest about it. There are elements of it that can be good, but we're just not there yet. We're at the full AI stage at this point, and that's why we have to wait and see. We'll see in a couple years if this ends up being what they say, where it's like, hey, it actually can be used by the companies themselves to make something that looks good. We shall see. But as of now, it's just the straight up AI filter, which is also not an AI filter, or however they try to explain it. But it's definitely weird. It's definitely weird because it does so much extra work. And once again, this is like their first showing. It does so much extra work that it makes it look like it literally changes the characters. It's like masks and stuff like that. So it's more like digital components showing stuff, or, making other things invisible to like contour things. But it's doing it so much to the point that it's literally changing stuff. People pointed out, it will literally change the position of where someone's eyes are. Like it might, basically change like the size of their head and stuff, which is more just like a visual mask on top of it. And it's like, that's interesting. That doesn't really work. So who knows how much time it's going to take before this gets into an okay situation, because they're putting it out. Let's be honest. As much as we can say we don't want a little more than but we definitely don't want this. It's going to come out. It's going to happen, and then we just really have to wait and see, because it's not going to be, like I said, hopefully it's not going to get to the point where it just instantly starts off where games are being made where they're like, well, let's just make it with NVIDIA in mind. And then they do all of the AI upscaling and stuff, and then that gets ported out as like the final version, even to consoles. Because admittedly, that could happen if it's starting at the base. They could probably, I'm sure there's a way to make that happen where it's like, this is the final look of the game, but it was all, it was blended in, half real people, half AI. Which, like I said, as of now, that would be real bad. 5 years down the line, maybe they figure that stuff out, and it's every company has their own set of like AI assets being built from their actual content and not just content taken from the internet. So it's like, this old person looks like how Capcom wants it to look based on the RE engine and not based on the internet saying what old people look like. That might work in like 5 years. Like I said, it's gonna take a minute before the companies do get their hands on it. And that's the really scary part, is how well that ends up blending in, because we'll just have to wait and see. Because if companies want to do it, which, let's be honest, it's so that they can do AI and make things easier, we just have to wait and see how well that works out. Because it's really, even as much as we might want to say like, oh, that's bad and that sucks, but yeah, and I say this every once in a while, when it comes down to it, the generic people that just pick up a game every once in a while and just are just like, I just want this game because it seems interesting, they aren't going to care that much. The amount of people that use AI all the time, whether they're really pathetic and they just want to make themselves look better, or they use AI to just make random crap, they're not going to care. They're going to buy games that have AI, and it's just going to be what it's going to be. So all we can really do is hope that within the next couple of years, as they definitely start implementing it, because that's what they want to do, that it actually turns out okay, and that we see this actual transition. Because right now, first showing, not a good first showing. It's showing itself right into the trash. But we do have to keep looking at it, because we don't have much of a choice. And that is the unfortunate thing. Although I will say, because it's a filter, you can turn it on and off. That's where, like I said, the scary part comes in. Like, what if they start, eventually, I feel like they're going to start making the games with that junk on. And then it's like, somehow, this is the ultimate version of the game with, DLSS5 basically implemented from the beginning as to how they actually made the assets for the game. And all I can do at that point is hope that it comes out okay, and that it's not changing everybody's faces. I mean, even at this point, when it first comes out, I'm gonna love the videos, because let's be honest, it's not gonna be perfect. It's gonna be that weird stuff where it's like, okay, like I mentioned with Bethesda, you zoom in, and it's one person talking and some background stuff, maybe a couple NPCs walking, nice and simple. Let me see you run around that person in 360 and they're turning their head to face towards you while you're running around, or you start shaking the camera around real crazy. Let's see how well the AI filter can keep up. It'll probably do a decent job, but at the same time, I bet there's gonna be some interesting stuff going on, because, it's a showing. That wasn't a stress test, because believe me, when the gamers get their hands on that, when we start seeing that stuff and everybody else starts making videos, that's when we'll see what it can really do. Because people are gonna run, jump, they're gonna do every effing explosion and effect that you can possibly imagine at one time, and we'll really see what this DLSS5 can truly do. So right now, of course, it is what it is, and it is not great. It's interesting, because I'll say that, It's interesting for sure, but I wouldn't say it's good. I wouldn't say it's good, but I am excited to see the discourse. You know, every once in a while, I like my little bit of chaos, and all I can do right now is hope this stays in its realm that it's in, and it's an off situation. You can turn it on, you can turn it off, and we should be fine. As long as it stays that way, where it is always an off situation, on-off choice, I'll be okay with that. And then maybe at some point, like I said, we can leave it off for like 4 to 5 years, and then we can start seeing the on side of it, and it's like, okay, companies got their hands on it, they're doing their own thing, things are working out, it's looking pretty neat. All right, maybe. At this point, we just have to hope. That's where we are. We just really have to hope. So that's all I can do, because it is what it is. Like, we can't say like, man, I wish it was better. It is not. It just is. So we'll see what happens as it goes forward. I can't wait to see the conversation throughout the rest of this week, because it's been, you know, well, by the time you guys see this, it's been like 2 days since the official announcement, but it's only been 1 day, and it's fun. It's fun, to say the least. But I would love to know your thoughts. But they're probably, you know, just about everybody's feeling the same. I know there are people that are enjoying it. Like I said, I have that hopeful side, and technically speaking, it's already helped Bethesda, but you know, that's not saying much. But I have that hopeful side. A couple years down the line, it could just be okay. And it's just based on the assets. You know, as long as it stops taking from just everything and it really is just in-house, then I think we got something good. But as of now, it's just generic generative AI. And that's just taking, you know, ideas from everything and not taking it from the actual art. You know, like the whole element is everyone saying like, well, it's just AI stuff changing the artist's direction. At some point when they start to get their hands on it, that's the part we can hope for, where it's really the artist's ideas really being utilized, and then it helps them, you know, constantly produce their art throughout the game even faster. That's all we can hope for. That's like, you know, obviously like perfect dream scenario, but we kind of have to wait till we get there. And I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see how long that really takes. But like I said, I would love to know your thoughts on all things DLSS5. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.